Bishop, it's time. I didn't bring a guest. As a matter of fact, I canceled my guest because I want to say to the listening audience, I got a call from my bishop about 2 days ago. He said, Bishop, I read this book and you have to read it. It is Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man by Steve Harvey. It is right now the #1 New York Times bestseller. It says what men really think about love, relationship, intimacy, and commitment. And I have to say that Steve Harvey gives his best attempt to teach us women what he believes we should do in order to, and I have to say it like this, to snag a man. To snag a man. And Bishop is so nervous in the studio because he thinks I'm going to get him, but I'm really not, Bishop. I was blessed by the book. Periodically, there were some things in this book that was good, and then there were some things that were just ridiculous to me. I have to be real, Bishop, and in the middle of reading the book, I said, this book is nothing but an ultimatum, but I can't be that hard on Steve Harvey because he did lay some things out. Now, Bishop, there was 3 P's that he talked about. He said profess, provision, what's the third one?
Protect.
And protect. And he said that's generally what men intend to do. Now, I know my chairman is listening on tonight, and Deke, you need to help me. 631-888-88.
She's calling for reinforcement.
Because I'm going to tell you what it did for me, Bishop. I was reading the book, and it even helped me at the church, because as a female pastor, there are a lot of things, strong and independent, that I take the responsibility of doing. And I've noticed that some of the fellows in the church tend to take a back seat to some of the work and different things that have come about, because my father taught me to cut the grass at 10. He taught me to lay carpet in case I never got married. He taught me how to move furniture around and things of that nature. So I know how to do it. And very rarely do I think to stand back and to let someone else do it for me. And so, Bishop, we're not going to question you and interview you. I just want to talk about the book. The 3 P's, professing, provision, and the protection. And I want to ask you from your, I guess I am going to interview. I want to ask you from your point of view, how important is that? Because this book was like an ultimatum to me in some areas, and then to some areas it was really good. I think Steve was speaking to a target audience, to pretty much a woman who doesn't have a measure of balance or real good religion, because the Bible first tells us that a man that finds a woman finds a good thing, and that, you know, we do have to prepare ourselves, but in the manner that he was telling us to prepare ourselves, I thought was a lot of work. So how important, sir, because I need to know this, how important, because you know I'm single, and so I need to know how important is this really, the provision, the professing, and the protection. How important is it really to a guy?
Well, before I answer the question, if I can attempt to put this in a social context, because I think that's important. Number one, Steve Harvey has sold 1 million books. I paid $26 for this book. If I take $26, multiply that times 1 million, there's a whole lot of folk listening to Steve Harvey. And I think that adds some credibility and it adds some significance to whatever it is that he's saying and he's doing, because he's obviously meeting a need. He's addressing an issue that is shared in and participated in by a whole lot of people. I also, before I get to those 3 P's, I also think that it's extremely important to understand the foundation and the groundwork that Steve lays out for this book. He does as good a job using a street ethic and a urban approach to what clinicians and psychologists and sociologists have spent a great deal of time trying to explain. And that's this whole area of anthropology. He says 3 things. He says, a man defines himself by who he is, what he does, and his economy. Now, that's what drives those 3 P's.
What he makes, right.
What he makes, his economy. So that's what drives those 3 P's, because he is attempting to fulfill and address those 3 basic areas of his life. Profess, provision, protection, I think are important because they do attempt to put the male in the position of fulfilling those things that define who he is, what he does, and his economy.
All right, I'm not going to get you, Bishop. I'm just going to be nice, because you're my bishop, and I want to come back and preach at Hollywood. You know, Jackson, Overseer Jackson. We were riding around long in the car. I was reading the book, and I kept reading different portions to you. We hit and Bishop, this is going to be girl to girl. We hit a brick wall. Steve basically said, your man wants to be treated like a king. Remember that portion? Yeah. Then he turned around and said, even if he doesn't act like a king, he wants to be treated like a king. And I almost had you pull over the car. Because I said, nobody's going to treat a king. He'll treat somebody like a king who acts like a peasant. And I found, Bishop, I like the book, and Steve does have a practical, he has a practical approach to it. But there was some contradiction. You want to be treated like a king, but then you want to act however. And it was almost like, well, we're going to act that way no matter what. It's just who we are if we don't get what we need at home. And that's where my issue came in, because it was, you do A, B, C, and D at home, and we'll say at home. So when we do A, B, C, and D at home, but then because you can, you take other routes. And Steve went on to say that a little later, because men can get away with some things they do. And, you know, I had an issue with that. So Jackson, we talked about the king and the peasant thing. Help me. Help me. Come on, cuz.
Help her.
Because I'm going to talk about what Bishop said about the 26 million. You know, well, when we added the money, but the million books. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but help me.
Well, I personally think that if, you know, the man be the man, then he won't have a problem out of the woman. Mm-hmm. I don't think he really won't have a problem out of the woman. With the tidbits that you were reading out of the book, Steve Harvey didn't leave much to the woman. It's like we just go along and do whatever to make the man happy. But then I think that the man has to make the woman happy too. Mm-hmm. But I had to remember that he was talking about how the man is, and not necessarily on the woman. And so I had to keep that into perspective. But I just think if a man is the man and he acting like the man, there won't be no problem treating him like that. You know, he said in the book, he talked about if you go out to dinner, you know, let the man pay. Mm-hmm. You know, but men don't always pay.
That's right.
And they don't always offer to pay.
That's right.
And sometimes they want you to pay. They want the woman to pay. And so it's just different stuff like that. You know, if he's going to be the man, then act like the man all the time. Right. And he won't have no problem, personally, I think.
If I could, Bishop, and I think that the point that you have made is an extremely important point, because he did say a real man will pay.
Right.
And
yes,
he
did.
made that. He made that distinction. But I don't want to appear to be totally sold out to the book, because I had some observations, both pro and con.
We said that.
And one of the items that where I think the book comes up short is that it objectifies the woman and puts her in the position of being the facilitator. And there is no room, there is no space for the development of her plan, the implementation of her plan, the fitting in of that man into her plan. It is all centered around the plan of the man, and the selection of the woman, whether she's going to be game fish or whether she's going to be a keeper, has to do with how well she can fit into his plan. So there's no unilateral, and there is no equality there. Now I understand that he's talking to women who are striving to attach themselves to a male figure, and maybe that's why there is that awkward silence in that regard. But there are women who don't want to be part of a man's plan. There are women who have their own goals, their own aspirations. There are women who don't see themselves as an attachment. There are women who are coming from a whole different framework. And so to make all women the same and give them advice that is universal ignores the fact that there is contrast and difference even within the woman population.
Right.